Hey K-popers, and welcome back to NiziU. Today I want to start a discussion with you guys about a seemingly simple question. What makes a song K-pop? I'll start by talking about why it's an important question to ask, and then go over a really interesting chart to try and help us decide where we might draw the line between K-pop and not K-pop. Then we'll start to dig deeper and see how it just might be a bit more complicated than that, and finally I'll give you my personal thoughts on what it takes for a song to be considered K-pop before I open the floor to you guys. Before we get started, I want to quickly thank NiziU's honorary producers. If you want to show off your bias group in every video, have your say in future content in the channel, and join the official NiziU Discord server, come support NiziU on Patreon and join our wonderful community. So, when is a song considered K-pop and when is it not? I've seen this question come up many times, most recently in discussions on the NiziU Discord server, and I think it's a really interesting topic. But first, why even discuss it? Well, as we all know, K-pop has been growing bigger and bigger every single year, and with that, it's becoming more and more global. BTS's monstrous success with Dynamite and Blackpink's collaboration with Selena Gomez are just two quick examples of how K-pop took over the world in 2020, and it's been doing so for decades. So, as K-pop becomes commonplace in more and more homes around the globe, I think it's a good time to discuss what K-pop really is. And that's because it's only going to keep becoming more of a discussion as the months and the years go by. We're going to keep getting new music that continues to blur the lines more and more. And I think you'll find this deep dive is a bit different than usual. I want to share some thoughts here, but more importantly, I really want to know how you guys feel. I'm sure you have some great points and opinions about aspects I haven't even thought of here, so don't be shy sharing your thoughts on this video and how you personally view K-pop down in the comments. Alright, now with that, let's actually start trying to answer this question. I think a really fantastic starting point is this K-pop alignment chart, which was incidentally shared as a meme by Reddit user Hi I'm Trash, so shout out to them for this great chart. This chart looks at K-pop along two different axes, the artist who made the song and the lyrics of the song itself. So along the artist side we have the following: purist, which means a K-pop group must have only Korean members; neutral, which means K-pop groups can have some non-Korean members; and radical, which means anyone, Korean or not, can make K-pop. Then similarly we have the linguistic scale. Purist means the lyrics of a song must be all or nearly all Korean. Neutral means there needs to be some Korean in the song, but a lot of English lyrics are okay. And radical means that a K-pop song doesn't need to have lyrics in Korean at all. So now that we've got the chart all set up, let's start by looking at each square. I'm going to give a quick summary of the square with examples of songs that would fit in that category, so think about the examples and if you personally consider each release in them K-pop. It's going to really get you thinking. Alright, let's start in the top left corner with a pure artist and lyrics. Everything here is in Korean. Some examples here would be GFriend's Sunrise, ATEEZ's Wave, and April's Oh My Mistake. The next square is the upper middle square. This is groups who again are completely Korean, but they released a song that's only partially in Korean. Some examples here would be Red Velvet Psycho, since yes, Wendy's technically is Korean and was born in Korea, and ITZY's Icy. And that leaves us with the upper right square, which are Korean groups who released a song in a non-Korean language with no Korean lyrics. Some examples of songs in this square would be, of course, BTS's Dynamite and SHINee's Fire. Now we're going to start looking at music from groups who have Korean members but also have some international members. First up is the middle left square, which again is songs that are mostly or completely in Korean. So some examples here would be Twice's Like Ooh Ah, Tomorrow by Together's Crown, and Udu Sonyeon's Secret. Up next is true neutral, groups with international members that release songs with a noticeable amount of non-Korean lyrics. Songs like this include GOT7's Last Piece, Blackpink's Lovesick Girls, and EXO's Monster. And now we start heading to the majority non-Korean squares, starting with the middle right. These of course are songs from partially international groups that are completely non-Korean. Some songs from this square are Blackpink's Love to Hate Me, NCT 127's Limitless Japanese release, and Luna's Star. So now we enter the final row, artists who are strictly not Korean. Starting with the bottom left square, these are songs which despite being from a non-Korean group are somehow still full-on Korean songs. Examples here include Expedition's Stress and BGA's Dong Sayade. And that takes us to the lower middle square where we have an artist whose members are all international but the song is still mostly in Korean. This category is really niche in my opinion, but a good example here is Wavy's Turn Back Time Korean version. At last we finally have the lower right square. This is a song by a non-Korean group whose lyrics are also not in Korean. So actually this square is just pop music. Examples could be Maroon 5's Girls Like You, Fifth Harmony's Work From Home, and Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way. Alright, so now that we've established each square, where do you draw the line between K-pop and not K-pop? If you're like me, you're probably having a tough time and you might even be coming up with songs that break your own rule. For me personally, just using this chart, I completely view the top two rows as K-pop. The artists here are at least partially Korean, and even if the song is mostly or all in another language, it still has the same feel or vibe to me as that artist's other Korean releases. But am I the only one really struggling with this bottom row? At first, I didn't feel like the bottom corners are K-pop, but then why would a fully Korean song not be considered K-pop when a somewhat Korean song from WayV would be? So this is where I think we need to start expanding our horizons a bit, because as some of you have probably realized by now, every Japanese release is in the far right column. And more importantly, JYP's girl group NiziU would fall in the bottom right square here. I may be in the minority, but I still consider NiziU K-pop, as you likely can tell from me including their new song in the new releases section last week. So then is being managed by a Korean label the key difference maker? I think this is why I consider WayV's Turn Back Time K-pop more than BGA, even though BGA's song is a bit more Korean than WayV's. And this train of thought leads us perfectly into my overall view on whether a song is K-pop or not. I think this alignment chart is great, but it's a small, magnified look at one part of the bigger picture, and I apologize because I'm about to blur the lines even more than they already were. To me, there are two really important things that are required for a song to be considered K-pop. One, there needs to be a Korean connection of some kind, and two, it needs to just feel like K-pop. So let's go through them one at a time. First, the Korean connection. I think we can all agree it's ludicrous to suggest Maroon 5 could ever be considered K-pop, and that's because they have absolutely nothing to do with Korea or its music scene. But with a group like NiziU, it's different. Why? Because they're formed and managed by JYP, one of the big 4 K-pop labels. The connection could be the song's lyrics being in Korean, having Korean members, being managed by a Korean label, or something else, but there needs to be some sort of string leading back to Korea. And this leads directly into my second requirement, that it needs to feel like K-pop. I know, you're probably thinking that's way too vague to even be helpful, but hear me out. When you look at NiziU's latest release, Poppin' Shakin' for example, it feels familiar. The camera work, the visuals, the sets, the choreography, and the overall quality of the presentation, they're all befitting of any K-pop cute concept. And if you're a once, I'm sure you can pick up even more similarities because both of these girl groups have 9 members and are under JYP. How about this side by side, for example, from Twice's Likey and Poppin' Shakin'? Now, I'm sure some fans are probably not nearly as generous with the definition of K-pop as I'm being right now, but let me try to win you over here. Where did K-pop really start? I would argue it was in the mid-1990s when Sotaeji and Boys revolutionized Korean music and became the first true idol group in Korea. What did they do so differently with their music to become so popular back then? Well, they drew on musical influences from other genres like rap, techno, and rock. And as K-pop grew, each generation of groups evolved their music and releases to pull in the best of countless genres from around the world. From Sotaeji and Boys to Finkel to Super Junior and A-Pink and G-Friend and BTS and every group in between, K-pop has been constantly improving and evolving into the incredible diverse genre that we know and love today. When I click on an MV, I just know if it's K-pop or not. The incredibly talented idols, the amazing choreography and the vocals, the stellar production quality and direction of the music video, and yes, of course, the song itself. Every little decision that was made and influence that was drawn from combines to make one overall product that stands out above the rest of the music out there, and to me, that's my definition of K-pop. But I want to know how you guys feel. Which of the squares on that alignment chart do you consider to be K-pop? Does the company matter? Is there another important factor that I didn't even consider? I'd love to know where you guys draw the line between K-pop and non-K-pop songs. As always, thank you so much for watching this deep dive, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on all the great K-pop content coming your way every single week right here at NiziU. This has been deep dive number 49, When is K-pop no longer K-pop?